They go to the LSU program for the first time in several years. Great opportunity for the Lions. Look, they targeted players from the SEC, Blue Bloods, Ohio State, and now LSU for Miles Frazier. What do you think? I think many people believe that he's going to be potentially competing for a rotational spot, but maybe early on might not be a starter, but a great fit for the Detroit Lions. I think great value. I think a good player that you see can be a complement on this offensive line and to add depth and a good rotational spot. What did you make of the pick of Miles Frazier?
Yeah, I think Miles Frazier was one of the. Yeah, I when I texted you about it after the selection, I said it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Christian Mahogany situation, where he's just a guy who was viewed by a lot of different evaluators as kind of a top 100 prospect, expected to be day two, maybe the fourth round type of pick, and for whatever reason, he just slid down the board. I think some of that is just the overall offensive interior maybe being devalued a little bit. A lot of people like to take tackles and move them to guard. So sometimes the guards kind of wear the brunt of that. But I do think, and I wanted to go over some of these numbers with Miles Frazier. Started his career at Florida International. He was a freshman All-American, and he was the starting left tackle at Florida International. He transferred to LSU. The following year, he starts 13 games, 10 of them at left guard, 2 of them at right guard, and 1 of them at right tackle. And that theme kind of continues throughout the rest of his collegiate career. So this is a versatile player who has the ability to provide a depth option at multiple spots, just about everywhere but center is where he started games in college. And while it'll be an adjustment, adjusting to the Lions, offensive line and what they ask of all their guys. So it's not like he's just going to be able to come in and be fluent in all 5 positions right away. He does give the Lions options. And, he's another guy that's not going to go down without a fight in terms of the starting position at guard. And, I think that there's some heat on Graham Glasgow now because you've added 2 guards in this year's draft, and then you added a guard in Mahogany, and potentially Dan Campbell talked about maybe moving Manu over to guard too from last year's draft class. So all of a sudden you got 4 new faces, and also that puts a crunch on the roster because let's face it, the Lions are going to carry 10 offensive linemen max, and your starters are going to take 5 of those spots. So if Grant Glasgow stays in the starting lineup, you got one of the 3 options there going in at right guard, and then your other 2 guys, whether it's 2 from this year, 2 from last year, are going to take those depth spots. So all of a sudden, this roster starts to feel really small, especially when you take into account that Dan Skipper is probably going to be the swing tackle. So this, to me, sets up a fascinating competition for the offensive line heading into training camp.
Agree, and that's what you want. And so similarly, I do think that Coyote Awosika, Colby Sorsdal, Dan Skipper, they're going to have to really showcase, and Michael Neese showcase what they're about, and that's what you want in competition, especially with the undrafted free agents that were brought in. So it's going to be intriguing along the offensive line. And then something that Brad Holmes said was they're going to cross-train a lot of these draft picks so that you can see potentially Frazier and Ratledge on both sides, both guard positions. And I'm curious to see how it's going to shake out. And rookie minicamp in a couple weeks will showcase a little bit about what the Lions think early on.